When I call your name, every fear is banished from here. When you call my name, I'll come running, running to you. And you say, come to me. Spread your wings, catch the wind, he's carrying you.
Shalom and warm welcome to this month's Jerusalem Dispatch ICEJ UK. This is the pro-Israel Christian ministry that brings you a closer connection to Israel and the Jewish people through the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem UK. And in this program we shall be discussing the emergency Jerusalem summit that was organised in Jerusalem by the ICEJ, and also be talking about the Jerusalem Affirmation, a reaffirmation of our faith in Yeshua HaMashiach, and also understanding the biblical and Jewish roots of our faith. And in today's program, I'm joined by Jacob Greaves, who is the social media manager for the ICEJ UK, and also very familiar to our viewers, Pastor Reagan King, my co-host on so many programs. So it feels like I'm doing this program with really good friends, and I partner with you as well with Jerusalem Dispatch Live once a month. I'll start off with you, Jacob. Firstly, you do an absolutely outstanding work when it comes to your social media work. You even made me look good. And I love what you do. You're so creative, and you get that message about Israel and our biblical understanding out through social media, through our YouTube channel, through Instagram. And yeah, it's a pleasure to know you, and you're a fellow Arsenal fan as well, so it gives you more brownie points. But tell us about your story, and particularly your connection to Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I grew up with a Jewish Israeli dad and a British mum, and grew up kind of being aware of that, knowing that we had family out there in Israel. And my dad took me there, when I was born, many times when I was growing up, when I was 13 as well, and then even beyond that. So we grew up visiting the family, kind of knowing our cousins, being in touch in that way. Sometimes they also came over to the UK when we would have family reunions. So it was very much just a known thing that we have Israeli family, and that's part of our life. It never really crossed my mind that I would ever go live there. But basically later on in life, as I grew up, I remember we went out for a family wedding when I was like 22 or something like that. And one of my aunts in Israel, she was like, "You should make Aliyah." And my dad had never really talked to me about it at all. So I don't think it was even in his mind that it's something that I would do. But basically I looked into it from that point onwards. And every step that I took, it was just incredibly smooth compared to how many people had told me the process can be in terms of making Aliyah. And so, yeah, it was very smooth. My dad was actually quite smart because he knew that it can be a bit tricky, and he had actually paved a few, he had helped me do the right things in the right way to give me the best opportunity. And so I did actually end up being able to go to the Jewish agency with an Israeli passport already in my hand, which they didn't like very much. So that worked out quite well, mainly because my dad had already got me an ID number from when I was born.
Amazing.
And he did that for all of us because he was an Israeli citizen. So he just did that through the embassy, and it meant that the whole process was a lot more smooth for me. Yeah, so I moved to Israel and made Aliyah, did the whole kibbutz ulpan thing with a whole group of young Jewish people from around the world, South Africa, South America, Europe, and all that. And it's kind of a crazy time. You're in classes every day, you're working, in the different areas the kibbutz have you working. And then you get towards the end of the 6 months and everyone's kind of trying to figure out what they're going to do now, because you're sort of like left to fly almost at that point. And I didn't really have a plan about what I was going to do. And honestly, I think towards the end of that time, that's really where, more than any time in my life, I really had to really just seek the Lord and come before him and be like, because I wouldn't say at that point in time my walk had been like super strong even. It was almost I needed that point of pressure to be like, okay, you've brought me here. You've made it all work and it's possible. But now I don't know what I'm going to do. And there's a much bigger story there I could go into, everything that happened after that. But the Lord really did make a way for me, and I ended up living in Jerusalem and meeting my wife. And now we're actually back in the UK now. And I'm sure, we might end up back there again.
I need you on the Middle East Port to unpack it for all our viewers. And Reagan, what can I say? How long have we known each other? How many programs have we done together?
Hundreds.
And I consider you a very special friend, as well as Jacob here as well, but a real special friend. And it's been one of the great privileges to actually work with you with so many programs. And I've really, really enjoyed it. And I've enjoyed doing Behind the Headlines and unpacking that with you and stuff as well. So big thank you to you.
Well, and thank you, Simon. I mean, 2017 was the very first program, I think.
I saw talent when I saw it. When you were a guest on Politics Today, there was a talent there that I kind of recognised.
Bless you.
And stuff as well.
Simon.
But tell us about your exciting role, apart from being a pastor, apart from being a presenter on Revelation TV and doing more programs than me. And just unpack for us the incredible role and honour you've been given to be the main chaplain for the Feast of Tabernacles for the ICEJ.
Last year, I was immensely privileged to be asked to be the main chaplain there for the Feast of Tabernacles. I came to know ICEJ through yourself. Over the years, you've had the Jerusalem Dispatch, you've done different things with ICEJ, and I remember after October the 7th, you said, look, there's this opportunity coming up. I think it'd be really important to go and, to actually be a part of the solidarity mission to actually see some of the horrendous sights of October the 7th and to pray over the people there and to strive to support. This is only 3 or 4 months after. And we went, and it was deeply impactful, deeply impressive, a harrowing time in some ways, beautiful time at the same time in other ways. And so that was the first main, I knew of ICEJ beforehand, but that was my first actual contact really with. And as time developed, and then went to the event last year, went to some ICEJ stuff that was here, also had contact during a period of sabbatical there, and they said, look, why don't you come and join us as our chaplain for the feast. It was an incredible time.
Amazing. So back next year in Jerusalem.
Yes.
And you do this social media work, Jacob, so just unpack for us very briefly the challenge facing Israel on social media and trying to get Israel's message and trying to get a biblical clarity on God's plans and purposes for Israel, as well as educating and informing people about this great ministry that is ICEJ UK.
Yeah, I mean, I think even Netanyahu and a lot of other Israelis have said, on one hand, Israel won the war, or maybe they would say that they won the war kinetically, but in other ways, they really haven't won the war in terms of how Israel is viewed and how Israel is portrayed in the media and in social media as well. And I think the way that the algorithm in general works has a lot to do with that. If you're in one demographic, or if you're in one kind of, a demographic, or if you're perceived by the algorithm to be interested in a certain set of things.
Just unpack for us what an algorithm is, maybe.
Sure. Sorry. The algorithm is basically how a platform decides what you see. So if I'm on YouTube and I watch a lot of the World Cup highlights, the next time I open YouTube, it's going to give me a load of similar content because it thinks I like that, right? Works exactly the same way. And what happens with a lot of young people is sometimes also the algorithm will guess based on your age, your gender, or whatever, what you might like. And once you start flicking through and looking at things, then the algorithm just feeds you more and more and more of that. And so what happens a lot of the time is young people, and everyone in fact, can end up in information bubbles where they're only receiving certain news, certain types of broadcast and information, and a whole load of things just get left out. And that creates like a lot, and that comes out a lot when you might talk to people and you're like, wait a minute, do you really understand the story here? Do you really understand the history? And the truth is, it's just never been exposed to them. And so what we're trying to do is bring the truth into social media. And you know, we do get a lot of pushback, we do get a lot of fightback, we do get a lot of negative comments. But it's better to do that. It's better to actually put the truth out there than just not even engage, you know. But in some senses, it is. I wouldn't say it's a losing battle, but it is something that it's structurally set up sometimes to create bubbles of like information bubbles.
Of course, because then there's the commercial interests and all that stuff as well. So no, that's great explanation. Thank you. And Reagan, tell us, our viewers watching the program today, why it's so important that they get behind this, the vision behind the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem, support them, and be a real blessing to Israel and the Jewish people in such a practical and amazing way with all the projects involved.
ICEJ is particularly unique, I think, in that it has a real role, a very evident role of influence and impact on the nation of Israel as a whole, encouraging people in every sphere of society. So I don't think I've ever seen a ministry like ICEJ or organization like ICEJ, whatever one wants to call it, that has such impact on every tier of society, from the top, where you have high politicians like the Prime Minister, like the President, that have great respect for ICEJ and have been impacted by its work, down to the people on the kibbutzim in the Gaza envelope. And to sign up and to be involved with ICEJ UK, you can know and be a part of a collective of people who care for and love the Jewish people, who not only care for and love the Jewish people in the UK, but who are part of active initiatives in caring for and providing, being the hands and feet of Jesus, essentially, to the people across the nation of Israel.
Absolutely. And also, Jacob, just share with us the important events that are coming up, and certainly this month there's that exciting event coming up in Scotland, both in Glasgow and in Edinburgh.
Yeah, we have two conferences coming up in Glasgow and Edinburgh, as you said. So they're going to be really excellent times where people are going to be able to be really encouraged and informed about what's going on in Israel. We've got some great speakers coming up. Yourself and John Ganim as well, who's a Yemenite believer who has an incredible story and an incredible testimony of how he's come to really love Israel and the Jewish people. So I'd really encourage anyone who is watching that they can go to the ICEJ website, ICEJ UK website, and they'll be able to sign up to attend.
Absolutely. So if you're in Scotland, you have no excuses not to turn up. And Reagan, tell us about this year's Feast of Tabernacles in Jerusalem. So getting my notes, it starts on the evening of the 25th of September to the 30th of September, and this year's theme is The Lion Roars. So just unpack for us about the importance of being in Jerusalem and being able to attend this incredible feast, which is known as the Feast of Tabernacles.
Well, this has been going now ever since the inception of ICEJ, and you have each year looks different. You have over the years sometimes where there's been whole stadiums filled with people, and we've seen post-COVID those numbers have not been as they once were, but they're building back up, and it's just an encouragement. Even as I was talking with local Israelis of all backgrounds, they look forward to this time because they see Christians from all around the world come in, and they have a parade as well, you know, a march that's it sees all of the flags of the different nations represented, and many different groupings and organizations that are outside ICEJ also tag along and get involved, and it's just a great time. But even a taxi driver speaking with, they said, every year this time of year, they recognize the ICEJ lanyard, they recognize the groups that are there. Sometimes they see the same people, and it's a really positive Christian witness, an expression of love for the Jewish people, and a realization of that prophetic witness as well. There'll be people from all of the nations under heaven gathering to celebrate Messiah at the Feast of Booths.
Amazing. So you got that very special role as the feast chaplain, but also got it on Mark Starbuck, who did an amazing job in that role before you.
Very highly regarded.
Yeah,
very highly
absolutely.
regarded.
So let's have a look now at the promo for the Feast of Tabernacles taking place this year at the end of September.
The Lord roars from Zion and utters his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth quake. But the Lord is a stronghold to the people of Israel. Can you hear it?
So therefore, if you are thinking about going to Israel, why don't you go in the end of September and be part of the UK delegation for ICEJ UK and be part of this year's Feast of Tabernacle, the Lion Roars. Jacob, now on to our main topic of conversation for the programme. Share with us the importance and the significance of the Emergency at Jerusalem Summit, where the ICEJ in Jerusalem in the Eternal City organised a very important summit for Christian pastors around the world and Christian leaders to address this global climate of Jew hatred and to reaffirm Christian support and love for Israel, but also getting back to our biblical roots and recognising that Yeshua HaMashiach, our Saviour, is the Jewish Messiah. He's Jewish in every way, and also what underpins that is God's plans and purposes for Israel and the Jewish people from a biblical perspective.
Yes, I mean, I think it was, given everything that has gone on since October the 7th in 2023, and we've seen the rise in anti-Semitism, I think it was the right time and the right thing to do to bring leaders from around the world together to really address this. We had major political leaders in Israel also participating in the event, with Isaac Herzog and Benjamin Netanyahu also being involved. So I think it was the right thing to do and the right time to do it. And I know that a lot went into it as well to help people really know how to go back to where they came from to address this in the areas that they come from as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And Reagan, just kind of underpinning this, I know a lot of theologians, professors, were brought into the Jerusalem Media Summit to address these big issues. And one of the big issues was the danger of church replacement theology or supersession theology, this whole concept that the church, ever since the Nicaean Creed of 325 AD, has essentially removed the call and the calling of God on the Jewish people, and the foundation of the Jewish roots of our Christian faith have been ripped out. and tell us really the challenge really for the church in the modern era is to understand the biblical significance of Israel and the Jewish people, because there has never been a time in history where an independent Jewish state and God's covenant with Israel and the church are actually living alongside each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important question to delve into, and there are many different strands that we could look at. What's important, and I'd like to take it from a slightly different angle often, is many of the individuals who advocate for replacement theology or supersessionist theology, as it's often referred to, do have a professed strong belief in the sovereignty of God, right? So that they believe in the sovereignty of God. Everything works out according to His providence. If that is the case, then should we not recognize the sovereign preservation, the providential preservation of the Jewish people throughout history? And should we not recognize the sovereignty of God in reestablishing a state? People say, well, we don't necessarily support the state of Israel. Well, hold on, God has allowed this nation state to be reformulated. And I also add that at no point in human history has the nation state of that area of Israel as a unified form existed longer than it has now. Think about that for a moment. Okay, under a kingdom, under the monarchy, right? You had a unification of all of the tribes. Previously, they were scattered across.
Yep.
Okay, then you had with David. He comes into Jerusalem. That's when you first see Jerusalem come into this prominent role. Previously, the spiritual center was Shiloh. He brings then the people all together. Okay, it was only sometime after, during Rehoboam, Solomon's son's reign, that you see the kingdom divided, and it was never at any point experiencing the same unity that it has today as at that time. We've now just surpassed the period of length. So God is sovereign. If He's sovereign, then surely we should say, there's something to this. Beyond that, the biblical element of this, beyond the maths and that reality of the sovereignty of God, is this element that nowhere in Scripture do we see the promises of God nullified or voided in relation to the Jewish people and their claim on that land. God says, I'll disperse you, I'll cast you out into these different places, but I will restore you. I will bring you back. There's a lot of different strands to replacement theology, but the reality is that the church doesn't replace Israel. Rather, the church is built on, it's grafted into the tree that is Israel. We have the same roots.
Commonwealth of Israel.
There we are.
It's not there for no reason, is it?
Exactly.
So let's have a look at the highlights now of the Emergency Jerusalem Summit.
We need to ask God to open up a horn of oil upon us.
Because the timeline and algorithms reinforce the idea that it is normal to hate the Jewish people.
We need you more than ever.
We need to strike again and again and again and again and again until we win the battle.
October 7th uncovered and unleashed the anti-Semitic dogs of war and havoc.
And everyone says, I dare you to violate it because we're going to fire back. So they've killed around 700 Hezbollah terrorists.
God says when you go into exile, you're going to be there for so long.
Teach your kids the Bible.
May we never cease praying for Israel and never stop loving the Jews.
When you stand with Israel, you stand in that same spirit.
What is important in Paul's theology and distinctive is that grace is understood as an incongruent gift.
I had a supernatural experience on the road to Damascus. My eyes were blinded.
Always intact, while I witness and document that they're conspiring to tear that down on you, and you will be trapped and persecuted and fighting from a place of weakness unless you step up now.
And we pray that the day will come very quickly.
The land of Israel was holy, not simply because the people of Israel and Jesus lived there. As for all who walk by this rule, peace be upon them and mercy, and upon the Israel of God. That all who walk by this rule is the entire Christian community, Jews and Gentiles.
Über die Rettung von ganz Israel geschrieben.
What has been written about the salvation of all Israel?
Es wird nicht geschrieben, dass ganz Israel gerettet wird dadurch, dass die Gemeinde aus Heiden entsteht.
It is not written that all Israel will be saved as a consequence of all Gentiles coming in.
And to refuse to view Zion from God's perspective is to lose sight of his unfolding redemptive purpose.
And it's quite interesting, you know, these doctrines from then, they are resonating with us today.
God told Abraham, I'm going to create a people, and you're it. And I'm going to put you in a place, and this is it. And this is going to be your place, and I'm going to give you a purpose.
It's almost like being there yourself, the highlight reel that was this year's Jerusalem Summit. And Reagan, I think we also have to, Jacob, we have to also unpack this new forms of church replacement theology, don't we? Primarily being pushed and peddled by Tucker Carlson, who is doing so much damage in providing misinformation, misunderstanding about Israel. And then we've got the old traditional churches in Jerusalem saying that God has no plan or purpose for Israel, despite all the scriptures, despite all the evidence. And so therefore we're seeing this church replacement theology, Jew hatred, merge into new forms to undermine Israel's authority and call of God upon its life.
Yeah, it's really interesting what's happened with Tucker Carlson, and he's one of a few others as well that have sort of jumped on this bandwagon almost, and it's hard to tell how much they really believe themselves and how much they're just trying to get viewership. But the bottom line is it's peddling misinformation, and it's also, as you say, it's emboldening, you could say, some churches that are local in Jerusalem as well to be more vocal themselves in their anti-Israel rhetoric, despite them probably having one of the safest preserved ways of life in the Middle East. Israel's probably the safest place for them to practice their faith from anywhere in the Middle East.
And religious freedom, but going forward as well, tell us how so many Christians, particularly young Christians, are being influenced by social media, by the mainstream media when it comes to Israel, and this is having an impact on their theology because they're literally biblically illiterate.
Yeah, we do live in an age of the digital age, the age of a 30-second clip, and that's what you form your entire view around, and that's just how young people's brains are being wired now. I think they are bringing in a ban in this country, aren't they, soon for young people, because, and I'm not saying I'm for or against that, but the point is the data is that young people spend hours and hours and hours every day just flicking through the feed and seeing what's there. And you have players like Tucker Carlson and others, maybe even Candace Owens and others, and the level of, I'm just asking questions. No, but the point is you're asking questions and not pushing back on some things that are actually very, very, just dated tropes, anti-Semitic tropes.
And if you ask questions, you have to be willing to hear the answers.
Yeah, of course.
Reagan, as a pastor, I suppose one of the biggest challenges facing Christianity in the Western world really is biblical illiteracy, isn't it?
It's a massive issue. It's a discipleship issue. It's a commitment issue. It's a discipline issue. You're not involved in the life of the local church. You're not involved in small groups. You're not involved in actually reading the scriptures. Everything is from the algorithm on YouTube, right? So I literally, Dave, recording, I get a call from randoms all the time because church number comes to me, and I answer the call, and I have this gentleman on the end of the phone wanting to share with me about how apparently Jews in the USA are conspiring with Donald Trump And it just went completely in this. And I said, look, I'm going to cut you off here. It was basically rehashing the protocols of the elders of Zion, and was, presenting this theory that Jews are trying to en masse slaughter Christians in the USA. And I told him he was nuts. But he says, oh, no, there's a Facebook group. You need to watch it. It's on Facebook. So that makes it real then. So that makes it legitimate. Discipleship is, it's a real issue. And what I find, Simon, is there's often this idea people don't want to talk about it, and they cherry pick passages of the Bible and abuse them. So Paul says, I resolved to know nothing but Christ and Him crucified. Fantastic verse, wonderful and true. They interpret that as we're not here to talk about those things or teach about anything other than the gospel. But Israel is very central in the gospel message. And Paul, of course, he addresses all sorts of issues from national Israel and the Jewish people's lives and their importance, even in a Christ-following context, to sexual ethics, to inter-church relationships, all of those things that are part of the gospel. So I hear these excuses given, these reasons and rationales given. At the end of the day, a lot of people don't want to have to dive into the difficult substance and weighty elements of it. At the end of the day, many people want popularity and acceptance from the world and are just following the trends.
But going deep into the scriptures, that's one of the most exciting things of the Christian walk, and to enhance your walk with greater biblical understanding, it just really improves your life.
Read Romans. In one setting, I challenge you, the viewer, read the letter of Paul to Romans in one setting, and you'll see this playing out historically, right? You'll see there's a tension there. When I first did this, I was approaching Romans from a slightly different perspective and angle. When I read it through in one sitting, I realized this is dealing with a conflict between Gentiles and Jews in the early church, particularly there in Rome. And he's dealing with bad attitudes and wrong perspective on both sides of each other. If you're not reading God's word like that, you're not going to figure these things out.
Very helpful, very helpful. And Jacob, share with us the significance and the importance that the Israeli government took the the Jerusalem summit last month in Jerusalem, organised by the ICEJ. For example, we had the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, and we'll be hearing from him shortly, addressing the delegates. We also saw, for example, that there was a wedding on the final day in the hotel where the Jerusalem summit was taking place. So the MFA, the Israeli Foreign Ministry, kindly opened up their doors to host the final day, and it's a fabulous building, the MFA. I've had a pleasure being a personal tour around there, being around there. But tell us the significance and the importance that the Israeli government place on this summit, and how they have fully supported it and got behind it.
I think it really shows how much they recognize Israel really needs the support of Christians around the world, given just how heated things are. So I think it really shows sort of more openness than there has been in the past towards ICEJ and just towards Christians in general. I think they realize that the Christians are the best friends that they have right now. And we're really still in very unstable times moving forward. So I think now is the time for Christians to really stand with Israel and to take advantage of this moment now where even the Prime Minister and the President are taking time out of their schedules to be there and to be present during this event.
Absolutely. So let's have a look now at Isaac Herzog, the President of Israel, addressing the delegates of the Jerusalem summit in Jerusalem last month.
Educators, theologians, pastors, ministry leaders, distinguished guests, from the President's residence in Jerusalem, the holy city. It's such a pleasure for me to welcome all of you to this emergency in gathering of the Christian embassy in Israel. You're going to deal with the most complicated of topics, one on church, Israel, and anti-Semitism. And I want to thank you especially for your ongoing work day in, day out. We are witnessing a very disturbing surge of anti-Semitism all over the world. This is a major challenge for humanity. This is the age-old, perhaps the oldest plague in humanity. And we have to stand up together, thought leaders and religious leaders, and say no more and teach people about the sources of this evil and how to counter anti-Semitism. I believe that countering anti-Semitism requires a combination of three major elements: law enforcement, adjudication, and education. Meaning, first and foremost, to demand from your governments and to demand from all other governments to fight back against anti-Semitism by law enforcement, meaning against some of those demonstrators who spread blasphemy against the Jewish people and the state of Israel. Adjudication, meaning also applying court cases and legal precedents, but most importantly, education. Educating the young generation. It cannot be that there are places around the world that people erase Israel off the map, the only nation state of the Jewish people. It cannot be that people take it for granted that there could be swastikas in schools, on kindergartens, that there could be stones thrown on synagogues and yeshivas and higher education institutions of Jews. It cannot be that people learn and drink from the fountain of poison and spread it out. And you, dear leaders, have a huge capability of fighting back. And I bless you, truly. I bless you as the President of Israel for coming here and fighting back, coming here and discussing how to fight back. So thank you all very, very much. I want to thank the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem for its incredible work, especially Dr. Jorgen Buller, who's a real righteous man at Tzaddik, him and his colleagues, for carrying on this torch and moving it forward from generation to generation and spreading the good message on Israel and the Jewish people all throughout the world. May God bless all of you, and may we all see better days, and may we change the minds of human beings all over the world to understand the incredible mission and purpose of Israel and the Jewish people. Toda Rabah to all of you.
And that was Israel's President Isaac Herzog sending a very strong message of love and support to those delegates who attended the Jerusalem summit. He's a wonderful force of good for Israel. He brings stability, he's calm, he's reassuring, and particularly in the light of the horrors of October the 7th, he has been Israel's strength. And Reagan, isn't it interesting how, for example, after the horrors of October the 7th, and we know after great evil, God uses what's meant for harm and evil and destruction and uses it for good, because the Israeli government and the Israeli people have realized that their true friends are born again, Bible-believing Christians who have a biblical understanding of Israel. And so much so that they've actually now appointed George Deek, who's a Christian Arab. He was first the ambassador, Israel's ambassador in Azerbaijan, and now he's got a special job as the special envoy to the Christian world. And he personally addressed the Christian Media Summit. Sorry, not the Christian Media Summit, the Jerusalem Summit.
Yeah, it's incredibly important, and I think that's very significant. Also, the fact that George is an Arab Israeli, he's a Christian himself. In that role, it highlights the nonsense accusation of apartheid. It highlights the nonsense accusation of, that would seek to ostracize. I know people who, when I speak to them of Arab Israelis and Christians who are there in their support for the nation, even though that is what these individuals identify as, they insist on referring to them as Palestinian Christians. And if they are unwilling to have the narrative of certain individuals in the West Bank or Gaza, they are unwilling to hear them because it's a systemic anti-Semitism that says, well, no, that they've been impacted or they've been bought, and they use all of these. They don't even realize the tropes that they're engaging in. So to have George Deek as this representative, special envoy to the Christian world, addressing the Jerusalem Summit, of course, was massive. It was a big deal. But to have him in that role is something that is incredibly important. And for the Israeli government to recognize that they are loved and cared for and prayed for by believers, it's a powerful witness and testimony. Mike Huckabee, the ambassador of the U.S. to Israel, has been one of the foremost Christian witnesses to that government for many, many years, but particularly in the past couple of years, such a witness to the Lord there.
No, he's an amazing guy, and from your home state as well. Right. And yeah, let's Jacob, let's unpack what's known as the Nicaean Creed, which was addressed at the Jerusalem Summit. So this was drafted up in 325 AD for bishops around the known world, around Europe. So it would have been like the whole Turkey and Europe coming together in the Middle East to agree on a unified creed for our faith. But of course, underlining that was the need for political unification under the Roman Empire. And so any dissent on that would have caused huge political problems for these bishops. But in light of came of that, we really saw the birth of church replacement theology that still affects churches in the modern era. Just unpack for us really the kind of where the Nicaean Creed of 325 AD went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, to start with, it's taking place a few hundred years after Jesus, so all the disciples at that point are gone, and the church has had a few hundred years to develop its own kind of ways, and at that point there's lots of disagreements, and that's why it's coming together in 325 AD, and at the same time, you're right, Rome's looking for a way to consolidate and bring everybody into one singular faith. But the casualty of that was that none of the Jewish believers were invited into that council. And at that point you see there's a very hard separation at that point. Whilst there were some really good theological points that were nailed down, there's also just a great omission of anything related to the Jewish roots of the faith. So yeah, I think at that point that's really where the split happened.
So let's have a look now at the importance and understanding that we can gain from the bad decisions made at the Council of Nicaea back in 325 AD that's still having a ripple effect centuries or thousands of years later on the church's attitude towards Israel and the Jewish people.
Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. And he will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the land with the decree of utter destruction.
Exactly 1700 years ago, the Nicaean Council took place in what is today Turkey. On invitation of Emperor Constantine, close to 300 bishops gathered in the little town of Nicaea, just south of Constantinople, for the first global council in post-biblical times. The council lasted almost 100 days between May 20th and August 25th, 325 AD, to resolve pressing theological questions and most prominently to affirm the divine nature of Jesus Christ. In addition, Constantine himself pressed to find a unified date for the holiday of Easter that should be celebrated across the Roman Empire. The result was the Nicaean Creed, a powerful declaration of faith still valid in most churches around the world today. The divinity of Jesus was confirmed, theological conflicts were solved and a new date for Easter was agreed upon. What is less known is that at Nicaea, a deep breach was cemented between the Jewish people at large and the Christian church. In the following centuries, this rift severely harmed the church's relationship to the Jewish people, and from now on, Jews were referred to in the same breath with heathens, sinners, and heretics. Follow-up councils forbade Jews who believed in the Jewish Messiah Yeshua to keep their Jewish holidays, and Christians were forbidden to visit Jewish doctors or visit the synagogues. In the centuries that followed, it led to unrestrained hatred, persecution, the Crusades, the Inquisition, pogroms, and finally, the Holocaust.
What makes the Nicaean Council in particular sad that it was only the second global council in church history, the second council after the council in the book of Acts chapter 15. Back then, in the time of the early Jewish apostles, they opened widely the door for Gentile believers to join the fold of a Jewish church. Less than 300 years later, a Gentile church closed firmly the doors to the Jewish people. What Paul has warned of the church in Romans chapter 11 has taken place. The church has become arrogant against the roots of their faith and has entered into a pathway of persecution and hatred against the fathers of their faith. Today, 1700 years after the Council of Nicaea, the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem decided to invite the worldwide church for a 100 days of prayer and fasting.
And out of the 325 AD Nicaean Council, we have the emergency Jerusalem Summit to address those issues. But I think we have to look back in history, and sometimes for people that are not theologians, not historians, it's very, very difficult for people and Christians to grasp what actually happened of the Nicaean Council, and particularly as it led to it led, particularly in the Middle Ages, it led to the blood libels, it led to the expulsion of the Jewish people from England and from Europe. It was also then responsible for the Crusaders massacring the Jewish people on the way to the Holy Land to fight against the Muslim forces of Saladin. And then also the other aspect of this one is also then gave justification for the Spanish Inquisition, which was beyond horrific against the Jewish people. So share with us the legacy and the damage of the Nicaean Creed.
Okay, so the Nicaean Creed, I want to differentiate between the Creed and the Council here, okay, because it's an important differentiation point. The Creed is fundamentally orthodox. Every Christian, evangelical or not, has and should be able to affirm the content of the Creed itself, as does ICEJ. The issue is that at the Council there were other things discussed beyond formulating this creed, which is an affirmation of orthodox teaching in relation to the divinity of Christ. That's what they were dealing with primarily. Arius was a man who said Jesus is created, he's not divine, and so they're pushing back on that. There were only 2 bishops who refused to sign the resulting creed. The problem is that the council had a great deal of other decisions that they were making that were not only kept within the ecclesiological boundary as such. They were involving Constantine, who had no spiritual authority whatsoever. And out of that, as we've just seen in the video, there were decisions made and laws made by Constantine on the back of that completely began to separate almost entirely the Jewishness of Jesus, the apostles, and the Christian faith from, well, it basically denied the Jewishness of it in practice. And so the ICEJ has gone back to the Creed, and they've affirmed the Creed whilst also emphasizing and putting back in recognition of the Jewishness of Jesus. We believe in one God, the Father, Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all things visible and invisible. He is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Lord God of Israel. That's an additional affirmation. We believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the promised Messiah, an affirmation again of the messianic promises, the only begotten Son of God, eternally begotten of the Father, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, begotten, not made, being one substance with the Father. Through him all things were made. He is the one of whom Moses, the prophets, and all the Hebrew scriptures bear witness, for us and for our salvation, to the Jew first and also to the Gentile. He came down from heaven by the Holy Spirit. He was incarnate of the Virgin Mary and was made truly man. He is the son of Abraham and of David according to the flesh, a light to bring revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of his people, Israel. And it goes on in that affirmation to continue in the same vein, emphasize that Jesus is the one whom the prophets pointed to. So it's essentially a restatement and reaffirmation of the creed, whilst recognizing the great harm that the council actually helped facilitate. And in the decades immediately following Constantius, Constantine's son, and Theodosius, the elements of Jew hatred began to become more and more rampant.
That's a really brilliant explanation, so thank you so much. And just a reminder that you can actually download the Jerusalem Affirmation from the ICEJ UK's website, and please share it on social media, share it amongst your friends, read it and declare it, because it's so important that we understand the Jewish roots of our faith, understanding that our Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, our Saviour, was the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, is Jewish, and he's coming back to the Jewish homeland, which is Israel and Jerusalem, which is so important. And Jacob, we're running out of time, sadly, but I think we have to reflect on a little bit some of the great humanitarian projects that the Ministry of ICEJ UK is involved in, especially this wonderful story about bringing the Manasseh tribe back from all the way from Burma and North India back home to Israel, and fulfillment of biblical prophecy. And this tribe has been lost ever since Judah and Israel was divided by Rehoboam, and then the invasion of the Assyrians.
Mm-hmm. So ICEJ have been involved in bringing Jewish people from all around the world back to Israel. It's been a work they've been doing from the very beginning, and now they're getting to bring back Bnei Menashe from northern India, and they're making Aliyah back to Israel. So it's a time to celebrate. It's an exciting time, and the numbers are growing all the time now with Jews needing to make Aliyah, coming back to Israel, just with the rise in anti-Semitism that is growing around the world. So
absolutely. And Reagan, how exciting is to be involved at the forefront and the cutting edge of Bible prophecy, and literally helping the Jewish people come home, fulfilling ancient biblical scriptures promised to the likes of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and also the minor prophets. And this is happening in our day.
I think it's incredible to recognize the catalyst that God uses to fulfill His Word. There's always going to be a catalyst, and if we are part of that process as a catalyst to fulfillment of His promises, that's a really beautiful thing, what a privilege to be involved.
Yeah. And you've made Aliyah, Jacob. You know what it's like. You know what these immigrants, even though they're coming from India, have to go through. What is that process like? And we see them coming off the planes of landing in Israel, knowing that you're a full Israeli citizen. It doesn't matter where you come from, Argentina, where you come from the UK or France or India or China, wherever else around the world, but you're actually then to be welcome home in Israel.
It's an exciting time. You're filled. It's a plane filled with other people coming from, coming to make Aliyah as well. And then when you arrive, there'll be groups of men who come together to pray, and it's a deeply spiritual time. It's a deeply emotional time for a lot of people, and it's also just there's just so much to take in when you arrive, because for many it's something that they will have dreamed about for their whole life, even generations going back. So it's like you arrive, and even though there's so much road ahead of you, there is this moment of like, I'm here, I've done it,
Amazing.
So yeah, it's an amazing time.
Amazing. Reagan, summing up with only a few minutes left, share with our viewers how important it is that Christians today don't just have a theological understanding of Israel, but also get involved practically by being that love and support to Israel and the Jewish people they need, particularly through these incredible aid projects, and how they can do that by signing up for the ministry of ICEJ UK, getting involved and attending the conferences, supporting the ministry on social media, and also, contributing to the kind of finances that make all these projects happen.
The theology must always be practical in order for it to be of any meaning or use. And so I just encourage you, our viewers, to be thinking and praying through ways in which you can tangibly impact the Jewish people, in which you can actually and actively support the nation of Israel. If you are not going to support, then who will? And this is the reality. There are so many people who are giving into the false ideologies and mindsets of this current era, and we do see in the scriptures, even that is part of the prophetic word, that all of the nations will turn against. And yet we who are God's people, who are part of this this commonwealth of Israel, who are a part of the same kingdom, if we are not going to support, then who will? And so I think it's so important that ICEJ continues to have that support from people, from evangelical believers, particularly to be able to care for, to be the hands and feet of Jesus in word and practice there.
Absolutely. And Jacob, tell us about the importance of our viewers signing up to the mailing list of ICEJ UK, getting involved, attending the conferences and being blessed, because I've just been at the Lincoln conference, which was small, but it was outstanding. The content, the biblical understanding, the worship was amazing by Steve and his band, messianic worship music, and it's just so enriching. So share with us how our viewers can be part of this.
100%. ICEJ.UK is where you can go to find out all of the events that are going on, and you can also look us up on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and all of the information about everything that's going on in terms of events and other things. You'll be able to find it all there.
Wonderful. And quickly give a plug for Jerusalem Live that you and I do together.
Absolutely. And also there is Jerusalem Dispatch Live as well, where we have some really exciting guests coming on. So I'd encourage you to sign up to join that as well.
Amazing. So Reagan, Jacob done an amazing job this month on Jerusalem Dispatch, ICEJ UK. Thank you so much. And to our viewers, thank you for watching this program. The Jerusalem Affirmation is so important because this is a reaffirmation of our faith with a biblical understanding of the significance of Israel and the Jewish people. So please read it, sign it, proclaim it, and get involved and support this wonderful ministry that's standing with Israel and the Jewish people, that is the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem. And we want to thank you for watching Jerusalem Dispatch, ICEJ UK. Thank you for watching. Shalom and God bless from us.
Catch the wind, he's carrying